Welcome. We're really excited to be together with you, members of our community tonight, and hope that you will be very pleased with the things that are shared tonight, as well as hopefully learn quite a bit. I want to first thank our mayor, Chad Frank, for putting us in contact with Mr. Pawsey here at TV3 and making this happen. And I'd also like to personally thank Emily Allen and Megan Nobby for being catalysts behind this and extremely helpful to me. And of course, our panelists that you will hear from very soon. I'd like to read something from a book that I have here. I'd like to plug this book. It's called Under Our Skin, and it's written by Benjamin Watson, and the subtitle is Getting Real About Race. It's a fantastic book, and I recommend it highly. And I'd like to start by reading something that he says here. We experience something harsh or hurtful, and we point to the perpetrators. They're white, or they're black. We generalize about an entire race. We form an assumption. We form additional assumptions. We form a quiet prejudice. Deep in their hearts, millions of ordinary people like you and me, seemingly good people who consider themselves fair and unbiased, who have black and white friends, hold certain opinions, assumptions, and prejudices toward the other race. That's the problem. So we're hoping that by members of our community coming together and sharing their hearts and experiences with you all, that it will bridge the gap over troubled waters, and that we can come together and move forward in our community and reach out to one another and form relationships and come together rather than further divide. What can we do and what are we doing? Everybody has a personal or an emotional viewpoint about what's going on in our country right now. And lots of people like to post their opinions on social media. But the truth of the matter is, it's not really accomplishing anything. So where do we begin? Why not start with a conversation and a dialogue, which is what we're hoping to start here tonight. First with your own heart, and then in your home, and then your neighborhood, your workplace, your place of worship, and those you influence. Our hope from these panels will be that we hear one another's hearts and experiences in order to understand and educate not only ourselves, but to have a better dialogue. It's time to talk, it's time to be heard. It's time to care, love, and act. I'd like to explain how the series is going to be set up. Tonight we're going to focus on education and experiences that the panelists have had in education. In a few weeks, on July the 13th, we're going to talk about experiences that a new panel, each week we'll have new panelists, have experienced in the community. And then July 27th, we'll cover the workforce and careers and employment. And August 10th will be policing and the justice system. There will be one representative from each of those areas from our community present. We have a teacher tonight, Christina, with us. Very thankful for her participation. You can call in, and that number is 825-3245 if you have some questions or comments for our panelists. And you can also write your questions on the Facebook Live. So we look forward to hearing from you. So I'd like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. They're going to let you know their connection to Fayette County and maybe where they grew up if it wasn't here. You want to start, Tommy?
Yes, I'll start. My name is Tommy Williams, and first of all, I would like to, for everyone to know that I was born and raised a Southern gentleman in Selma, Alabama in the year 1962. I don't mind telling everyone my age. I've lived in Connellsville since 2004 with my wife, Emma Williams, and my son, Bryce Howard, James Williams, and Josh Williams. And we love our community here in Connellsville.
Your turn.
Yep. I am Christina, and I grew up in Liberty, but my husband and I live here with our daughter Gracie, and I teach at Eastview Elementary, and I've taught there for 7 years. I'm happy to be here.
I'm Pastor Richard Ware, senior pastor and founder of Higher Praise Worship Center. And I'm younger than Tommy. And, I have 2 children born and raised here. My wife's transplant from Seattle. And I'm excited to be on this panel about race relations, and hope that we can have some great questions and we can kind of dialogue and have some understanding. So I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I am Garland Moore, and I was born in the state of Texas, and my parents moved to St. Louis, and then eventually moved to Muncie, Indiana, and then I ended up in Carnesville, Indiana at the age of 7. And I've been in Carnesville, Indiana ever since then until I took off and went to college and came back to Carnesville, Indiana, and I've been here ever since then. And I do appreciate being invited to this panel to express my views and my points. And hopefully we can help the community and help everybody in the community. Once again, I want to take time out and say thank you very much.
So we're going to first ask that everybody here is going to take turns and talk about a positive impact, positive experience that they had in education. So who wants to start with that? Told you I was going to call you out.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and start this since I'm the one that's in. You know, I have a few experiences with education here in Carnesville, Indiana. And the reason why I say that I have a few is because, like I said, I grew up a little bit in the state of Texas. And every summer, my parents would always send us always back in the summertime to the state of Texas. But my first experience that I really do remember vividly, it was in 2nd grade at Grandview School. It was the first opportunity that I came in contact with being with a lot of white students. The majority of the students there at Grandview were like 90% compared to where I came from before. And when you're that age, you really don't see color. But at that time, oh yeah, I did. Because it's like, ooh, wait a minute. This is different. This is something I'm not used to. You know what I mean? But one of the positive experiences that I take from that, there was a teacher by her name, and I'm going to drop her name because I still see her very often. It's Mrs. Collins. She took me by the hand, and she said, you know, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. They're going to take you. They're going to accept you. But I'll go ahead and share a little bit of story behind that. At that time, when my father dropped me off at school there, one thing that he said, do not get your clothes dirty. And anybody from the state, down south, Texas, wherever, when your parents told you, don't get your clothes dirty, you didn't get your clothes dirty. You just didn't. Okay, but when it came recess time, there was a few boys who pushed me in the mud. And I had a very nice coat on at that time, and it was winter time, and I got dirty. And it wasn't so much of the fact that I cried so much because I was hurt. I was crying because I got my coat dirty. And the teacher asked, you know, why are you so upset? Are you hurt? I said, no, ma'am, I'm not hurt. I said, I got dirty. And my father told me not to get dirty. So she asked the young boys at that time, she goes, why did you push him in the, why did you guys push him in the mud? What was the reason behind it? And they said, because he's black. And one thing that I'll never forget, she put me up in front of the class and she says, you know what? This young boy is just like you are. The only difference in him is the color of his skin. He is just like you. There is nothing different. And to go a little bit step farther on that, she said, you know what? This young boy has something that you guys probably don't understand. He is able to talk with his hands. And they all kind of look like, what do you mean he can talk with his hands? What are you talking about? We see, my parents were deaf at that time. Their parents were still deaf, but not at that time, but they always have been. And that was my first language, was sign language. And that's how I learned, that was my first language. So as I proceeded to teach the class in 2nd grade, sign language, oh, it was all over then. Everybody's my friend. And I'll never forget that experience, this teacher taking the time out to say, you know what? He's just like you. The only difference is the color of his skin. And to go on top of it, he can teach you something. And by then, throughout the rest of my grade school career at Grandview, it was amazing. I didn't have no problems whatsoever. And like I said, with the majority of the students there in Fayette County at Grandview that were predominantly white, it didn't matter. We all got along very well then. And that was my first experience, I would say, dealing with that. And it left a very good impression on me. And like I said, whenever I do see her, because I do run into her every so often at different places here in town, and she still remembers me after all these years, and we're both up there in age. It is what it is, but that was really a good experience for me, and I'll never forget that, and I've been very impressed by that ever since.
All right, go, Rich. I'm going to move a little forward here. Okay, after elementary school, now you notice that I'm jumping after elementary school because I guess I didn't have any positive influences in elementary school. So I'm jumping all the way to almost high school. I went to, this is in Birmingham, Alabama. I went to Parker High School in Birmingham, and the school was all black. It was 3,000 to 4,000 students, and it was 30 to 35 students per class, which is way too many students. And so the teachers and I say the staff, we're gonna get to the positive, but I have to tell you this story here to get to the positive. And so by having all these students in the classroom, the teachers couldn't help every student. So the ones that was getting the work, doing the work, was able to pass the grades, get grades, get good grades. And I was one of the lucky ones. I was averaging 3.8 to 4.0. I was doing really well at the school. And I realized that the things that the school was teaching me, this is in Birmingham, Alabama, is things I've already learned in 7th and 8th grade, which is why I was doing so well. And my mom asked me I think it's second semester, she said, you're doing really well, I'm very proud of you. And she said, what changed? I said, well, Mom, I'm learning things that they've already taught me. I've already learned in the 7th and 8th grade. So I guess I kind of put my foot in my mouth then, because my mom said that's not going to work for me, and that's not going to work for you. So they had a college prep high school called Ramsey Alternative High School. I'll never forget that. You had to take a test in order to get into this school. And they was only taking students that made 90s to 100. And I took the test and I made an 8 or 9. So technically I shouldn't have gotten into that school, but I was an athlete. I played sports. So they kind of waived that grade and got me into that class. And so once I got into that class, into that school, I started the learning process. And once I started learning there, I was like 2 years behind, because I was at a college prep school is where I should have been at that time. We had 80 students in my senior class. And so I started to fall behind in my grades. And there was a teacher, I'll never forget her, Miss Amy McGee. And she took me to the side and said, Tommy, I'm going to tutor you to help me. And she took the time every week to help me. You know, when I was failing math or failing English or something, she would take her time to help me with whatever I needed help with. And she would encourage me, she would talk with me, and she motivated me to do better things in my life. And I would say, I would give her a lot of credit toward me being the person that I grew up to be. Miss McGee, she's a very, very sweet lady. And she was about 62 years old at the time when she took my hand and said she was going to help me. So that was a very positive experience. And out of 80 to 81 students in my senior class, all 81 students went to college. And I still stay in touch with all of my friends to this day, my classmates. Some went on to Fortune 500 companies, and just presidents of CEOs, and did outstanding at this school. And I go back to Miss McGee because that was my first positive experience that I've never had. In the elementary school, which we're going to talk about that later on.
You can now if you want.
No.
You talk
No.
about his.
Huh?
You can go ahead.
Well, all right. Well, I hate to start, but my first positive experience was in high school. And like I told you guys before, that if you got a positive experience and it didn't happen until your sophomore year in high school, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. A big problem. In Selma, Alabama, my mom, my dad, they didn't finish high school. They both stopped working. They both stopped going to school so that they can take care of help their mom and dads out to pay bills and things like that. And when I finally got to the grade, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade and things like that, I realized that education in the South was really, 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 really bad. My white classmates, they got a lot of attention, positive attention, versus the black students. I would be reading a book in class, and well, I have to say this as well. I'm 58 years old, and this still hurts me today that my teacher have always said, if you don't know the word, just say big word. Because she didn't want to take the time to teach me, but she took the time to teach the white students. But I didn't let that stop me there. When she was teaching the white students, I got closer to those white students when she was helping them sound the word out. Just say the word. And as I got closer and was listening, I was helping myself learn how to read. And my other brothers and sisters, the young brothers and sisters in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, they didn't care. Some of them didn't care about it, but I did. I cared about learning, and some of them didn't. And so I learned how to use those big words. And so that's why I say Miss McGee helped me out a lot. And that's a little bit of my positive and a little bit of negative there, which I hope is not too much negative, but I just had to share that and get that off my chest and stuff, and I feel a lot better. Thank you for listening.
Tommy had therapy. I guess I'm next.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, because I know we got some questions coming in. Fourth grade was a first positive experience that I had. Didn't really have a lot of positives before that. Had a guy named Mr. Gotze, and if it was late '70s, and he looked like the guy from Welcome Back, Carter. If you don't know, if you're young, check it out on TV Land and everything. He was a cool guy, kind of Italian or whatever, Jewish, whatever, and he had this afro too. His white guy with afro, and he was cool. He worked with me. He helped me. I wasn't going to make it through maybe fourth grade if it wasn't for him. I didn't talk a lot really until fourth grade because I had a stuttering problem. So he helped me out. And that was a positive, a very, very positive during my grade school. I didn't have any positive really during my grade school. I experienced racism, but it really wasn't from a lot of the students. It was from the teachers. So I'm gonna go ahead and go into that so we can get to some of the questions real quick. It's just like what they would do for someone who stuttered, have a speech impediment. They would take me out of class, and they would have me go to a tutor. So they take me out of class. I would go to a tutor. They would have me work on and all the stuff that you would do, to get your language right. And then they would take me back in class, and I would be behind. So then they would take me out of class again a second time and take me to another tutor to get me back up to speed from which the first time they took me out. So I was there. Well, let me go forward. I was there, and then during that time, my mom saw that they weren't really helping. My mom did everything she could. So I gave up on my Saturday mornings, and we would drive to Indianapolis, and she drove to Indianapolis every Saturday morning to get tutored because the school didn't really help. Wow. So my mom told me to be respectful, listen to your teachers. They're there to teach you. They should know. So when I was in fifth grade, instead of getting me caught up, they would give us handouts, and they would send us out of the room. So we would be in a hallway. There was three of us, and all of us were black. It was me, my sister, another one of my friends. And so we would lay on our stomachs, and we would do this little handout while our teacher taught the white students class. So I would get in there, and I would go, and I would look in the window because they would shut the class door, so I would look through the window. And you had to be careful because if they caught you looking through the window to see what the other kids were doing, you'd get in trouble. So I would get up, and I would look through the window, and they would say, "What are they doing?" I said, "I don't know, but it looks like math, but it got letters to it." And they said, "Well, tell us what they're saying," because I like to learn. So I would tell them what was on the chalkboard. Other kids would write it down, and we try to teach ourselves. And a lot of stuff I didn't tell my mom because I knew, it would hurt my mom. I don't need to listen to my teachers. And so I was in like third grade, and my teacher was having, and she, I don't know, she was resentful that she had to work with me or whatever during other class times that they made her work with me. So we had flashcards, and I would do the ch and the k. And then one time she dropped the cards, and she says, "I don't know why I'm working with you. You're not going to be anything. You're not going to amount to anything." And she goes, "Next card."
Wow.
And I was like, "Well, that's my teacher. She should know I'm an idiot. She should know. It's a teacher, And so I followed along with that and had to deal with that, to act like, you were more of a problem than a student. So you try to make yourself smaller. Yeah. So that, you don't get in trouble. Then I'm in second grade, and, we break up in reading classes, and we're reading, certain parts, how you hand out, you read this, you read that. So I'm reading mine. And I get to a word, and she goes, "Back up." She goes, "Pronounce that word again." I pronounce that word. She goes, "That's not it." So I'm there, and she stops the whole class. And everybody's looking at me, and I'm sounding out the word. I'm getting the word. And then she goes, surely you can't be that stupid. And I'm like, and what it was is I said the word right, but I didn't say it in its plural form. The word was what, and it was what's. It was on there.
Mm.
And I was nervous because I was watching him. I said, what? And I guess it's what? And she goes, no, it's what. And so, I have all my friends look at me and, teacher, she should know. She goes, surely you can't be that stupid. I'm like, well, I guess I am, And then when I come back and we go into reading the next day, I'm not in that class. She moves me down to lower reading classes. And she moves me off into another thing. And I'm down a class. And I have, and it's a lot to kind of process as a kid. Things are different. It's not the same. And whether it's intended or not, those things are done on level, because I was in class all year and I never saw it done to another student. I've seen kids missay words, be stumped on certain words and stuff like this. And then sometimes I'd find my desk moved away from the other kids and facing the wall. And I'm like, why is my desk facing the wall? Well, you're not getting it, so you must be talking too much, whatever. I'm like, I'm not talking to anybody. And then, I'd spend weeks with my desk against the wall. It's those kind of things that racism can be covert. It's not just being stopped by police. It's in all the other areas.
Mm-hmm.
When I had a friend when I was in college, and she was trying to get a job, and said, well, we don't have any really a lot of minority applicants, or really. And the guy says, well, she put her application in, she checked it 2 or 3 times, says, we don't have it on record. And she goes, well, I'm gonna fill it out another time. She goes, well, we'll promise we'll call you if you get it. So she goes and she fills out this application, and a very good college student. And she goes, this is what she says, Rich, I know it was God that told me. She's like, get out to the parking lot, I turn around. She goes, I see the woman tearing up my application and throw it in the trash can.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And she went back in, and the reason why that company wasn't getting any minority applications, because the doorkeeper wasn't allowing them to be there.
Yeah.
And so when the higher ups were saying we're not getting any minorities that are applying, someone down below there was making sure that no minority applications got in.
Mm.
And so what I want to say is, when people say when my white counterpart says I don't see it, well, of course you wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's like a woman saying to me, well, you don't see what women go through. I'm like, well, of course I don't. I'm a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so those racism, and the thing about it is those basically impact our life. Racism is a point where you come from a place of power. And a place of power was if you give the job, if you give the tutor, or if you give relief, and you can deny that person that tutoring, you can deny that person that job, or you can deny that person a room, a car, just based upon the way they look, then you're dealing with racism. And coming through school, that's a lot what you had to deal with. For example, I told the board before, I found out I was black in grade school. I found out on the playground what black meant. To where I was out playing with the kids, and of course they called them, they'd say certain names and they'd say certain things. And I came home and asked my mom, I'm like, I don't understand. Now, I knew, don't get me wrong, I knew, my skin was darker, and but I didn't know coming up that it was an issue. I didn't know, And so my mom had to sit, and she had to explain to me why kids were doing what they did, said what they said, and making fun of my hair being different or anything else. And that was my first understanding that people would treat me different, came from grade school. So when I say that black students learn more than reading, writing, and arithmetic through school, we do. You learn how society will accept you or not accept you. So I don't want to take too much time. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but that's just a couple of my stories.
As a teacher, I want to say you're not stupid.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that.
We have a couple of questions that people called in to share, and I thought maybe you would take this one after our mayor chat.
Oh.
Garland, you want that one?
Okay. This one I think is Kim wrote in, how will this panel help the superintendents and school board recognize that there is a great need for diversity among the teachers? What suggestions do you have to retain minority teachers once hired? I can start off if anybody else wants to talk to it. For one, is first hire them, amen. And, that's a big hurdle before you retain them. And the second one is being intentional. Recruit. I've seen with my white counterparts when I was working at restaurant how they would go out and they would recruit engineers. They would recruit whatever they need. When you recruit teachers, they come, they move here. It expands our community, which is what we want. Purposely recruit them. And the thing about it is, I'm going to be quite honest, what some of our Caucasian counterparts don't understand is if I'm a black teacher and I'm looking to be employed here at Connersville, and I'm looking on a list between, say, Marion or Muncie or Connersville, Indianapolis, I'm going to mark Connersville off. I'm say, well, that's a little country town. I may not be welcome there, so let me deal with the bigger cities. And you're getting marked off by some of the other people of color because they don't know that you want them here. Mm-hmm. So our website needs to be more diverse. How we speak needs to, the language that we use when we are inviting people for a job. They need to know this is a good place for diversity. They need to know that this is a good place for a family of color to raise their kids. But unless they know that, they will always, because for self-preservation, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
self-preservation. That's it. Yeah. We, for our kids and stuff, we say we have to decide when we take our jobs, are we wanted or not there? Mm-hmm. Is it going to be tough for my kids? And 9 times out of 10, because it's a small town and they don't realize that you're actively recruiting and you want minorities in our community, they will mark you off and not send you application. So when you recruit, let them know that you're pro-diversity. Let them know that you want the multicultural experience for your kids, because that's what they get when they're in college. And that you want that, and that's a high priority, then more minority teachers will want to be here and they will want to come. But you have to extend it to let them know that they're welcome. They're welcome here in our community. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go a little bit step farther than that, because while I was in college, leaving one university to go to the next university, I did substitute teach here in Carnesville High School. And I was given that opportunity. And I started out with elementary kids. And it was at the point, here I am fresh out of college, I'm substitute teaching. And I'll be honest, elementary kids, I was like, can't do that. They get on my nerves. I can't do that. You know what I mean? And then I went on, they said, okay, we're going to give you the opportunity to substitute teach high school, kids. And I did that, but at the same time, I'm like, ooh, no, we're too close in age. This ain't going to work because, you know what I mean? But then when I was given the opportunity to substitute teach junior high students, it left a really good impression on me. But something that I had to do, being a male who is black, when I went to go substitute teach, I came in dressed, suit, tie, jacket, the whole 9 yards. When my counterpart teachers were not dressed that way, they would always be like, why are you dressed in a suit and tie? You just coming in here to substitute teach. My thing is, I got to go a step farther, because I got to gain their respect first as a man, then being able to just teach them the lesson plan that was ahead of them. So don't get me wrong, I enjoyed substitute teaching. I enjoyed what I did, but the higher ups in the school situation, it wasn't like, hey, you know what? Keep pursuing this. We want you here. It was like, no, thank you for your services. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll go somewhere else where the pay's a little bit better. Even though I enjoyed it, and people all the time say to me, why don't you go back into teaching and do this and do that? Well, you got to make it more appealing to minorities to come back, like Richie said, to be here, to want to teach the students.
I know that I had an interesting experience when I worked at the high school. Several of the black boys that were in Bryce's class, my oldest son's class, they would come and congregate in my office. And reason being really that I was their point of contact at the school. And I had a conversation with a couple of the faculty there because they didn't understand why those fellows wanted to hang out with me. And it really wasn't that as much as I was as close to home as they felt with anybody on our staff, because we don't have anybody of color on our staff at that time. So I asked the faculty who were speaking to me at that time about it, and I said, have you ever imagined what it would be like to go to a school of 1,000 black students with an all-black staff and be one of 10 white kids there with no white adult on campus? And I specifically asked to not have a response to that, and I just walked away because I wanted that to be of impact, and I think that it was. But that is a concern because we have a low population of blacks in our community, and they need to have an advocate at their school, somebody that they relate to if that's necessary. I believe that. So we had another question from Sonny.
Yes. Sonny says, when I see an active display of racism, what should I do to offer help but not become a white savior? What is the best way to approach this situations? I guess I'll start this since I'm ready. You know what I mean? I guess the first thing that I can really say on this, if someone says to me, you know what,
This was a question too.
I am not a racist person. And if I know you, really know you, I know you may not be a racist person. But my question to you is, are you at anti-racism? There's a difference between not being racist, but you're not anti-racist. And what I mean by this is when you hear certain things or hear off-color remarks about someone, do you stand up and say, you know what, that's not right? Why do we do this? It's coming to a point that, I talked to Rich about it, and we talked to some other people about it. It's time for some uncomfortable conversations. You know what I mean? And I'll be honest, there's some uncomfortable conversations in my house right now because my wife is white. I'll be honest. So there's some uncomfortable conversations that we have. You know what I mean? So, but we have to have those conversations. So that's why I go back to this question. I'm not asking you to be a savior. I don't want you to be a savior. But what I want you to do is have those uncomfortable conversations with your family members, with your friends, with your relatives, with police officers. I'm not saying all police officers are bad, but I'm just saying with everybody in general, you got to have those uncomfortable conversations. That's where it becomes your anti-racism.
I know Tommy has
Anything you want to share?
Oh.
You go ahead.
Oh, well, we had and I agree with what Garland has said, and we had another question come in. Why do kids go to school on Martin Luther King Day or MLK Day here, but not in other places? They had to turn in things. Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm probably going to tell you more than you want to know. Okay. Well, this is it for and I'm speaking for Rich. So I'm not trying to say I speak for the whole black community like that, but I speak for my segment here. I remember when I was at Vision, we had one of the presidents of the company overseas come in, and they were talking about how we were shipping out supplies and shipping them back in, and he said, the MLK Day was a big problem because some places were taking it off, and when it became a holiday, it was a big problem for their shipping and receiving whatever. And the guy was from Britain, so I came and I told him, I said, dude, I understand what you're saying, but it's very, very hard for you in your position to come out and say with all these people that Martin Luther King Day is a problem.
Yeah.
That it's one of your problems. He goes, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I said, I know you wouldn't know until I would tell you. I said, but a lot was done to get that day, and to have you put it as one of the problems that you have is a problem. Now, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, and you can write under me. I'm one of those people where I don't want a Black History Month.
Yeah.
Plus, you gave me the smallest month on the calendar, 28 days. I don't need a Black History Month because our history is American history.
Yeah.
And if our history was taught in schools, then we would need a Black History Month to say of all the inventions and all the things. I didn't even print off some of the inventions. Madam C.J. Walker up in Indianapolis was the first female millionaire of any race. One of the top brain surgeons was Ben Carson, and his mom was illiterate. And I can go on, but that should be American history, not Black history.
Yeah.
And when I was in school, they would skip over the Civil War part of it, out of maybe sympathy for us, I guess, I don't know, whatever, but they slipped over the slave part and just talked about the Civil War of the nations, and it didn't do anything as far as teaching our kids. So there was never those hard conversations that we need to have. It's, we didn't even complain about that, even though that we helped build this country. The camera that captured all those beautiful pictures of the moon was designed and built by a Black man. The rockets that were taken into space on the space shuttle were designed by a white woman. I heard her speak. She came to our college. I'm just saying, all the miraculous things that we do. When you say go back, do you really want us to go back? I'm saying, we have to understand the racism, and to put it all together. How do I do? You speak to who is around you. That the basic thing is the human respect for one another. Like, for example, we were talking today, Black people don't want to be mad at white people. We don't want to be mad. I don't want your money. I don't want your handout. I just want the door to be open. And, white people get stopped by police, so do Black people. But after the stop happens, things change.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a different response after that happens. People say, well, what's the big deal? Why are there protesters? Why are they protesting? Don't hate that people of color protest. Praise God that you don't have to.
Yeah.
For example, you got to understand, to ride the bus, we got off and we walked. To drink out of a basic water fountain, we walked. To be able to get a burger at a counter that looks like this, we sat down. And to say that, when the healthcare system is not even, we weren't complaining. Amen. When everything else would complain. But when a lot of deaths happen to unarmed individuals, I'm not saying they were innocent. I'm not trying to paint them as a saint, but they needed a day in court, but they didn't make it because they got killed. We're just saying, now's enough. And there's a difference between protesters and rioters. Let me tell you this. I'm not one to say blow stuff up. I'm not one to say looting. Amen. Because I might want to go after things over and buy myself a TV. I don't want you to loot it, and nor do the protesters. There's video after video out there of the protesters stopping these people.
Yeah.
Putting their white and Black protesters stopping these people from looting that have been bussed in from other places to incite riots. But if you don't listen and see that, you think it's what the protesters are doing. They're not. They're just saying, can we have a dialogue? And I'm saying, I'm seeing different. In my 52 years of this, I've seen something different, where the Black community are finally saying, my white brothers and sisters, we need your help. Yeah. Your voice in some areas carries more weight than ours. Would you see it too? Would you please help? Would you please say something? And they're not out there. I'm telling you, they're not out there trying to do this. But I'm telling you, when there are riots, there are things of people who come from a lesser point. And this is what I'm saying. When Duke won the national championship, and they went out and they flipped over cars, and it was mostly white students, they said, "Oh, they're getting a little rowdy outside." Look, they're a little bit out of control in their celebration. But let it be something of injustice or somebody getting killed, or it's Black students, they're out of hand. And then you look at the thing up in Michigan where the people were exercising their Second Amendment rights to carry arms. They go up to the governor's thing to protest her locking down the thing. The police respect their protests. There's no problem. They're carrying, weapons. And people go, that is a good show of the Second Amendment. No, that's a good show of white privilege. Because let that happen in Detroit, and let their 100 black men come weapons. Well, in Louisville, they had a peaceful demonstration. Nobody had weapons. The police came out 3 deep with SWAT and 2 armored vehicles, and no one had a weapon. All I'm saying is the outcomes are different. I support the protest of the white gentlemen wanting their businesses and community to be open, and I even support their Second Amendment rights to carry. But I also want the same support for our African brothers and sisters when they come out and they don't even have any weapons, but yet the police are out there 4 or 5 deep in dogs, and there wasn't any police up there when these white gentlemen came with weapons. So is that a Second Amendment issue, or is that a white privilege issue? And so the thing is, we don't want anything of above. We want the same thing. And I think it could happen. And when people say, well, I don't do that, I don't see color, that's wrong. That means you don't see me. I know you're white. I know you're Hispanic. And I want to celebrate those differences.
Honor.
You know, I love to celebrate those differences. Go ahead and say you see me. I want you to see me. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm gonna be quite honest. I'm gonna shut up. When I talk to my young kids, and they're confused. Okay, so we go, and there's racism, and we hear it, and then yet we see all the tanning booths all over town. We see the spray tans. Then you make fun of us. You call big lips. Then we see you inserting stuff to make your lips bigger. And then and then my kids are asking, but why don't they love us? Why are they getting darker? Why are the girls braiding their hair? You know, it's been on social media about the influencers, the young white ladies that get real tans and they look like they're light-skinned black girls, but they're not. And it's been outrageous, and everybody likes that look, but why don't they love us? They have our athletes on their walls. They have their CDs or downloads in their car. They're wearing the sneakers that have our names on them. They're getting the tans. They're getting the hair things. They're wearing the hoop earrings. But somewhere along the line, that grace and that mercy, that love does not always extend to us. But you know, they can wear the Yeezys. They can wear the Timberlands. They can listen to the same music. They can bump. They can even use slang like us, but yet don't necessarily, you know, associate with. So that's confusing a little bit. It's confusing on those things. And believe me, I'm not saying this to make anybody mad or make it. I'm just saying we need to have a dialogue about this. And I'm not saying it. And believe me, we know that, you know, that there's great, awesome, our Caucasian brothers and sisters who are stepping up. Where my daughter was part of the Louisville March, and me and my wife was cracking up because we looked and she was showing the camera, and her friends go, "Hey, show the camera, show everybody around her." So she was marching, and she was in the middle, and everybody around her who was marching was white. The people she went to the march with was white. Everybody around her was white. I was cracking up, and I said, and I told my son was at the Indianapolis March. And the police put down the batons and marched with them. And I told my son, I said, this is so monumental. I'm glad you got to see this.
Yes.
And I'm glad you got to walk with the police officers and they walk with you. And I told my daughter, I'm glad you got to see the seas of colors. I mean, I'm talking about everybody was around. It's like 4 or 5 deep. And she was in the middle. And they were all white students who understood that, you know what, this is a human issue.
Yes.
This is a human issue.
Yes, that's the key. That's the key. That, you know, he hit the nail right on the head. And I'm gonna go back to this Dr. King thing because the profession that I'm in, we don't get Dr. King Day off. And my family members say to me, "Why are you going to work when it's Dr. King Day?" And I have to pause for a minute. And I say, you know, I'm a big history buff, and Dr. King, he wanted equality for everybody. So if my counterparts, no matter what color they are supposed to be at work and are scheduled at 8:30 a.m. I'm going to be there at 8:30 a.m. Because that gives me an opportunity to be at work that day, and it's Dr. King Day. And somebody says, well, why are you working on Dr. King Day? You know what? Dr. King, not only him, but a lot of other people marched and walked so I could have this job. I was given this opportunity. So why would I go ahead and work on this day? And while I am working, take a little bit of time out to educate you about why I'm here today.
something I'm worried about going back to school in the fall, not only dealing with all the regulations and stuff, but not letting the issue become white noise and not letting it fade away. So I want to know how I can better converse with the majority of white students and stop that ignorance and teach them to lead with their heart and not their brain and what's been driven into their, from their family and it's not stupidity, it's ignorance, because I teach 9-year-olds and 9-year-olds are innocent for the majority of it. And until somebody teaches them different, they can't change a habit and they can't change what's happening. So I want to create not a movement, but a change in the way they approach people of color or people who are different than them, not only by the way they look, but the way they believe and what they think, and approach it in a positive way. So how can I teach them to do that and still be respectful?
Well, I'll give you an example. I worked at Maplewood Elementary last year, and as a success coach. So I get to deal with all the disciplinary and absentee, and kids that come to school and don't come. And I had a couple students, little white boys and girls, that would call the biracial kids the N-word. And I get to bring those kids into my office and talk to them about it. And one thing that I've learned is I asked them, I said, where are you getting this from? And I overheard my parents. Parents are teaching these kids these words. And I said, well, tell me, how do you feel about that? And they said, well, I don't even know what the N-word is.
Yeah.
Except for a black person. So as I educate those kids and talk to them about it, and I think it only happened once. And I always stay in touch with those kids that I know that have done that and said that. And I always, see them in the hallway, talk to them and stuff like that, because when they use that N-word, basically they're talking about me as well. And I let them know that, people of color are not in, they're not the N-word. They're Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, Mr. Williams, whoever, they're not the N-word. That's a person. And I said, we have to respect everyone, regardless of their race. And believe it or not, those kids, they get it.
Yeah.
The young minds get it. If you're able to talk to these young minds and stuff like that, they'll get it. And I haven't had any problems.
Yeah.
They get it.
Well, the biggest issue, like I think it's just a personal thing, teachers need to start singing like a choir. And I'm gonna tell you this: it's hard to dance if everybody's singing a different song.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying, and unless the teachers form and they're getting the same message from the teachers, like, well, this one, let's hear kids say it and let it pass. This one doesn't. And I want to tell you, it is 100% a learned behavior. There is no such thing as a prejudice gene.
No.
There's not prejudice gene. It is 100% a taught behavior. 100%.
Yes.
100%.
And so to say like, well, we've always been this way. No, you can change it. There is no prejudice gene.
Yeah.
And like, they're not arresting 7-year-olds and 9-year-olds for this behavior. And so it's important. A lot of times teachers spend more time during this developmental time than the parents do. And it needs to be a point. And it's not just enough to punish a kid because he says the N-word. Is we need to have some diversity training with young kids.
Yeah.
I mean, on their level. So if you got a kid who's doing this and that's what they get at home and they're talking racist language, just like you have any other class as far as like tutoring, whatever, then okay, instead of kicking the kid out to make him more angry because he got kicked out because he called somebody a word, so now he's twice as mad at the black people. Instead of doing that, you you take them to this class, sensitivity or whatever you want to call it class, and then you give them a crash course in people.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
I mean, because my blood saved your kid's life if he has surgery.
Yeah.
You know, just like anybody else's blood. But again, the school system, everybody has to sing like a choir, and punishment does not. You know, well, we're gonna kick him out for a week. We're gonna kick him out for a month. We're gonna do this. It doesn't do anything unless you. I mean, it's the school. Educate.
Yeah.
And
Educate.
that's key, education. And first of all, I want to commend you, teachers, because you have a rough job as it is anyway.
Yep.
But Richie hit the point right on the head. The point is educate them. Because now my stepdaughter comes home and she's got math assignments. And I look at it and I'm like, woo, boy, this is above my paid grade level. You see what I'm saying? But I'm trying to help her and teach her certain things. It could be the same way with that.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Your kids can probably teach you more than what you know.
Yeah.
Because my teacher has said, you know what? They're part of the human race. They're just like we are.
Yeah.
They do just like with us. They just and they've done this, they've done that. And the parents are going to be like, ooh, really? Just like when it comes to that new math that they got, I have no idea what it's like, but they teach me.
Yeah.
So why not teachers take the time out to teach the children? The children go home and be able to teach the parents. Yeah.
And it go beyond just a day in February.
Oh, it's beyond the day in February.
Yeah,
Because
it
like
needs
I
to be
said,
embedded throughout.
it needs to be every day of the week. But you know what? It could be, something happened on a Monday, and we're going to take care of this. And then later on, it happened a couple months later. We talk about it then. We just can't talk about the month of February. That's one of the coldest months around. We're going to talk about Black History Month.
Shortest coldest month. We got
Snow days.
Yeah. We got the chapter on February. But real quick in this, I'm saying this is, as far as doing that and educating and people, no one's born that way, is that we need to really be intentional about that. I mean, we're intentional about putting them in if they go in detention, if they go whatever, why not make it that point to where they learn at the part that they can understand and that they can carry this message, because kids do teach kids other stuff. So why does it have to be bad stuff?
Yep.
And we need to understand also is that these same kids who don't even know the meaning of the word, who are just saying what the parents say, they're probably wearing some name brand stuff some black person has done. But this is my thing real quick. I know we get short on time. Listen to this. Is we are so absent from history. That's why I believe racism exists, because people don't think we contribute.
We got 2 minutes.
People don't think that the black racists contribute, and the technology that I can go on from the stoplight to the ironing board to the modern day toilet to getting on the moon to all like that. Nobody knows that all the things that the black community has contributed to our way of life. Even from the fastest computer now, have this other thing is invented by a black man, and on and on. So it's easy to think, okay, the lazy don't do anything because you don't know our contributions, because our contributions have been taken out of what's been taught. So our kids thinking, well, I know what George Washington, I don't know what, and couldn't he name? After George Washington Carver or anybody else. Yeah. So we need to understand that. So I'm done. Here you go ahead.
Well, we just want to really appreciate all of you that have tuned in tonight. We hope that you'll come back on July the 13th, where we're going to discuss some of these issues in our community. And we really can't really voice the gratitude enough for your investment of your time here. And we are truly better together. And the way that we move this forward is by continuing this dialogue that we had tonight. Keep that moving in your home and in your place of worship and in your schools and neighborhoods and those you influence. We appreciate you again. Good night.